Hey there YouTube, Zach Beller YGO back with another video, and this time I'm going to go over an Exosister deck that I just played yesterday at Locals. This is a really cool deck that I had never tried before, and with the WCQ coming up, I wanted to try other decks that maybe wouldn't normally be on my radar as much due to them not having as high of a ceiling or them not being quite as efficient as other decks, but due to budgetary constraints and the fact that I'm kind of going last second, I've decided to play something other than just like Snake Eye, although if I have access to that, I may end up still playing that, especially because like I won't be able to get the Fiendsmith stuff and all that, so it's hard for me to take the event too terribly seriously. But I still want to do the best that I can, so I want to play the best deck that I am able to. And one of the things that I have found is that historically I do better when I make like a meta call and I go with my gut. And I think that with everybody so hyper fixating on decks like the Snake Eye Fiendsmith and Tenpai and things like that, that a deck like Exosister is actually very underrated and can take quite a few matches up off the top decks. So I decided to give it a shot, and I want to show you the build that I went with for my first time ever playing this deck. And I'll go over what the deck does, some of its strengths and weaknesses, and I think some of the changes it might make going forward as well. So first up, you have 3 Exosister Martha. This is the best Exosister monster in the main deck by far. If you only have Xyz monsters or no monsters, you can special summon her from your hand, and if you do an Ellis from the deck, and you're locked into Exosisters the turn you activate that effect, which is very key. And then all Exosister monsters share the same secondary effect, where if a card is moved from your opponent's graveyard by your opponent, you can Xyz summon using that monster as a material. You can special summon an Exosister monster over it using that as a material, and it's treated as an Xyz summon. Thing is that Martha is also unique in that she doesn't care if it's you or your opponent that moves the card. So like if you have her on the field and you DD Crow or Bestial, then you can get that bonus as well, which is really good. Then there's 3 Ellis. Ellis is the second best one by far. It's just a free extender. If you have an Exosister monster, you can special summon it. And then if you have Stella, you can gain 800 life points. The coolest part about this, though, is that even if you draw Ellis without Martha, it's at least an extender, so her plus any of the other names can still get you there to your turn 1, which typically tends to be Magnifica or like Michaelis plus back row or something like that. So there's a few options. I played double Sophia. This one lets you draw a card if you have another Exosister monster, and then if you have Irene, you gain 100 life points. She's okay. Getting to see extra cards is obviously really good, especially if your deck is a weaker engine, which this one certainly is. The thing about Exosisters that I like, though, is that while you don't have as strong of an engine, you have a much wider toolbox than most decks do, because being a rank 4 deck means you get access to all of those crazy rank 4s that we've had over the course of, 12 years now. Or, yeah, about 12 years since rank 4s really started to take off. So Sophia was really good for that regard. 1 Stella lets you special summon she's Marauding Captain, basically. Or if you haven't ever really played with Marauding Captain, Goki Suprex. She just lets you summon an Exosister from your hand. But she doesn't do it if she's summoned. She's just doing it if just during the main phase. So there's in theory a time where you could just special summon this, leave it in the field, continue to play, search, and then later on summon a name, which is really cool. And then the 1 Irene. Irene is the worst one by far. Although hilariously her effect isn't too terrible. You can take an Exosister card from your hand, put it on the bottom of your deck, and draw a card. And then if you have Stella, you gain 800 life points. But that's it for the monsters. The reason why you only see 1 Irene and 1 Stella is because these ones I feel like have the... it literally goes from best to worst. These 2 I don't think are going to be useful nearly as often. They're just names, whereas these are the most commonly searched for ones that I wanted to have in my hand. Then we have 3 Exosister packs. This is a incredible consistency card. You pay 800 life points and search for any Exosister card besides packs. And then if you added a monster, you can special summon it if the other Exosister monster mentioned in its text is on your field or in your graveyard. So sometimes that can let you get to like 3 bodies if you need to, which is really cool. I really only ever used it just to search and then set up for a follow-up for the next turn. But knowing that you have the ability to do that is an amazing level of flexibility. 1 Carpet Divum. This card was very good. It's a continuous, which, you know, that can be kind of hit or miss. But neither player can target Exosister monsters you control with the effects of monsters special summoned from the graveyard. So that's really important because let's say your opponent is doing their Snake Eye combo and they bring back their Flamburst Dragon with Promethean Princess. Now they can't move the monster down to the spell trap zone. That is actually really important. And then you can only use the following effects of Carpet Divum once per turn. If you Exceed summon an Exosister monster, you can declare 1 card name. You negate the activated effect and the effects on the field of cards with that original name until the end of the turn. So if you were worried about Nibiru and you have this in your hand, you can call that, and then they just can't activate Nibiru after resolution, which is really good. It's legitimately prohibition. But one other cool thing is that since it negates the effects on the field of the card, I was facing Lightsworn at one point last night at Locals, and they had a defense position Chaos Angel that had both of its effects live, so I just used Carpet Divum to call Chaos Angel, and that negated those effects. And then the third effect is that if an attack is declared involving an Exosister monster, you can target a spell or trap on the your opponent controls and destroy it. And that's really cool because that means that you can hit like Divine Temple the Snake Eye, you can hit back row random monsters that Snake Eye set up. You can hit like Labyrinth, for example. If you're playing against Yubel, you can hit Nightmare Throne or Nightmare Pain. It's actually really important that that card has that effect. And that was kind of why it was the 41st card, and I'm really glad it was. It was a very important addition. I played 2 Exosister Returnia. If all monsters you control are Exosister monsters, you have to have at least 1. You can pay 800 life points, then target 1 card your opponent controls or in their graveyard, banish it, and then you apply one of the following effects. You can immediately after this effect resolves, Exceed summon 1 Exosister monster using monsters you control. Or you can, if you've Exceed summoned this turn, banish 1 card your opponent controls, and that's non-targeting. So with this, Michaelis, which we'll get into, and Magnifica, you can banish up to 4 cards in your opponent's turn, which is an incredible amount of removal since none of that is destruction, and that's really good into Yubel. And then there's 1 Vadis. This was the worst Exosister card, the support cards. I think I used it one time, and it's really more of like a floodgate, like a don't do it, because if you touch your graveyard, then I get my monsters. You pay 800 life points, you choose 1 Exosister from your deck, and then take 1 other Exosister from your deck that is mentioned on that monster, and you special summon both, but then you shuffle them into the deck in the end phase. And then for the rest of the turn, after this card resolves, you can only special summon Exosister monsters from the extra deck. It wasn't that great, but it was just like a cool, like, I viewed it as like almost like a turn skip for Lightsworn, where they couldn't do anything, because they were stuck dealing with the fact that if they touch their graveyard, I'd have 2 free Exceed summons. For supporting cards, especially like consistency, because this deck can be a little bricky, I played 3 Pot of Prosperity. So typically off of Prosperity, I was banishing the utility rank 4s, my Typhon, my SP, and honestly my Zeus. And I'll go into that in the extra deck as well. Although I found that I was generally only banishing 3, which I found was pretty solid. I don't think I needed to go 6 deep at all. I'm sure there will be times where you need to. So you just banish like your utility, because again, this is a toolbox. But the thing that this deck really needs is the ability to see specific cards. Like you need to see Martha or Pax. So being able to effectively ensure that you're going to through Prosperity is really good. And then I played 2 Sakitama and 2 Aratama. So this was an engine that I wasn't actually totally sold on initially. I wanted to do like the Photon Wing, and then I realized that it conflicts with Martha, so that kind of disqualified that from the deck. And I went with 2/2 just to make room for like more hand traps and things like that. I kept drawing Sakitama with no engine at all, which is really unfortunate. If you aren't aware of what these cards do, Aratama on normal summon searches for a spirit monster, and then Sakitama allows you to reveal it, and then special or normal summon a spirit monster from your hand, so then you can normal summon Sakitama. So you can literally go Aratama, add Sakitama, normal summon Sakitama, and then you go into your Exosister combos. But Sakitama isn't even the worst draw on its own. If you draw it with an Exosister, I just didn't, so that card became a lot worse. But these were not terrible. Again, it's just more consistency cards, more normal summons that this deck needs. And that was the engine portion of the deck. For non-engine, the main reason I was playing this deck, honestly, is because it can play so much non-engine, and it can play flexible non-engine, which I really found to be important, and I think that going forward will still continue to be important. But, of course, the best non-engine in the game, honestly, 3 Dimension Shifter. Yubel, Snake Eyes, they both really struggle with this, so being able to have that is incredibly important. The other most impactful non-engine, I think, going into the WCQ will be the 3 Droll and Lockbird. The thing is that between Fiendsmith and Snake Eye, they will, like that hybrid struggles into Droll. Tenpai can struggle into Droll. Yubel very much can struggle into Droll. I think that this card has to be in your deck somewhere. Even Salamandrate, hilariously, as a tier 2 deck, struggles into Droll. Like, these cards are... And Shifter. Basically, if you look at any deck that you're thinking about playing for the WCQ, it probably struggles into these 2 cards. And because of that, I wanted to be able to play a deck that can play both of them and doesn't worry about either of them. Then I played 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring as well. That's the other, like, insane hand trap. 3 Infinite Impermanence, and then 2 Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. So that was it for the hand traps. There's 14. This gives you an 85 or 86% chance to see 2 of them in your opening hand, which is pretty great, because if it's one of these 2, then that's a turn skip, and if it's these 3 here, then at least it's something to slow down the full combo. But I had 3 more non-engine slots, and originally I considered Ghost Mourner, and then just like, I don't know, 2 more hand traps, like 2 Nibiru or something. But Nibiru conflicts with the Martha, so that kind of wasn't my ideal thought. And then, like, other hand traps just didn't really seem like they'd be as good. So I ended up going with the 1 Call by the Grave, just to counter, any random card. And I went with 2 evenly matched in the main deck. So I typically don't like the idea of playing board breakers alongside hand traps. I've spoken about that in the past in articles and in video about how you want to go with one or the other. The reason for evenly matched, even though it is a board breaker, is because drawing 2 hand traps generally isn't going to be enough. Unless it's one of these 2. Unless it's these 2 specifically. In like tandem with each other, or just in general. Like, these 2 will get you to be able to maybe stop their turn, but like these 3 they'll probably be able to establish something. What evenly matched does is, in that case, it almost acts like a hand trap that punishes the rest of their push. Because if you Ash and then Imperm and they still get to extend, they're going to end with a good enough field that you evenly matched it. Against Yubel, these 3 are going to do very, very little. They're going to be able to continue to push. And then you just activate evenly matched, and then they're left with probably just Phantom on the field. And Phantom by itself is not actually that hard to mess with. So I felt that I wanted something to punish them being able to push through the hand traps and have a weaker setup. And then the fact that my engine was weaker would not be punished quite as heavily. So that was the main deck. It was 41 cards. That just made it a little bit easier for side decking. I'm sure there's something I could cut for the 40th card, although the math between 40 and 41 is legitimately negligible. So We'll go through the extra deck now. First, for utility rank 4s, you have Evil Swarm Exciton Knight and number 41 Baguska. Exciton Knight has never come up. I actually considered having that be Emerald at one point, just to put back names, because one of the problems that this deck runs into is that you are a rank 4 grind deck, but your grind game is really atrocious. So you kind of have to, you're in this weird flux where you always have to assume the role of the beatdown. Like, you need to end the game as quickly as you can, but your deck doesn't do that especially well if they have interaction. So I was considering something like Emerald to give me more turns, although I think that the longer you go back and forth with the opponent, the worse your deck gets. So that's why that wasn't there, and this is just at least a mini Zeus. Baguska was there specifically if I get 2 bodies, which isn't terribly difficult to do. But I can't really establish much of a field. Like in my Snake Eye match, which was my round 4, my opponent ashed my Martha, so I had to normal summon Martha, reveal Sakitama, or maybe it was Irene or Ellis. Anyway, I got to 2 bodies, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to really do anything else, so I just ended on Baguska with Shifter and passed. And that got me at least to another turn. And that's kind of the idea between Baguska, is that between Baguska and Shifter and Droll, you should get to another turn. And then there's one Gibberine. Gibberine lets you on summon target and effect. If you control this card that succeeds summon using an Exosister monster, as a quick effect, you can target one effect monster your opponent controls and negate its effect till the end of the turn. And then its main effect, because that's not already enough, is you can detach material, and all monsters you control this turn that are Exceeds monsters will gain 800 attack. So that is part of your big swings. Is Gibberine gains 800, or gives everything 800. There's 2 Asophiel. When she succeeds summon using a Exosister, neither player can activate card effects in the graveyard this turn, which is incredibly important. That is an activated effect, so that is something to be considered, because you have to be careful of Appaloosa and things like that. But then you can detach material from this card and then target one monster your opponent controls and return it to the hand. So it's a great out to lingering just big bodies in the field. Let's say you use Droplet or something, hypothetically. I'm not playing Droplet right now, but let's say I use Droplet and then I need to get rid of the Flame Birds without killing it. Well, I can just bounce it back to hand at least and try to kill them through that turn. Then we get onto the better ones, which is 2 Caspatel. Caspatel lets you detach to search for Exosister monsters. And then if she succeeds summoned using Exosister monsters as a material, neither player can special summon monsters from the graveyard for this turn. So if you have her on the field, if you summon her, then that at least locks out the Flamberge Dragon, which can be really important. And then 3 Michaelis. This searches for the spells and traps. And during the turn she summons, she can non-targeting banish a card, which is really good. And then, of course, the main monster, Magnifica. She's used by using 2 rank 4 Exosister Exceeds monsters. She can make a second attack during each battle phase, which is absurd. And then, as a quick effect, you can detach material, banish one card your opponent controls, non-targeting. And then when your opponent activates a card or card effect, you can return 1 Exceeds monster under her to the extra deck, and then special summon it using her as the material, and that's treated as an Exceed summon. So let's say you have, for example, Michaelis under her. So let's say the main thing you'll do is you'll activate her effect, detach something, banish, and then they activate an effect. You chain Magnifica, return Michaelis back to the extra deck, special summon Michaelis over the Magnifica, and since Michaelis was summoned that turn, you can banish another card. That sort of stuff is just really beneficial, and really is why I like this deck, because it's a lot of little toolboxes, because you can either do Michaelis banish, Caspatel from stopping stuff from being special summoned from the graveyard, Asophiel to stop stuff from activating in the graveyard. So it gives you 3 toolboxes right there, which is really good. And then, of course, you have Zeus. This got summoned legitimately one time, and it was just with Baguska. Typhon never got summoned, but I wanted to have it in there just in case. Again, it was more of a prosperity target. And then SP Little Knight. This card is not necessary for the deck at all. This could have been legitimately like an Azalea, a Donner. It just didn't matter. I just liked that, SP Little Knight could banish something from the graveyard. It got banished with prosperity like every time. My main banishes with prosperity were these three. Every single game it would be these three, and then sometimes it'd be Waguska, the second Asafeel, and either the third Michaelis, although I was hesitant to do that, or the Zeus. The main reason why it would potentially be Zeus is because you're not able to summon Zeus the turn you activate Martha, and that's usually when you're doing most of your Xyz summons, is that first turn. So Zeus was dead more often than not, but having it in there as a toolbox, again, which is all this deck is, was really beneficial. And the reason why I keep emphasizing the toolbox aspect of this deck is because it reminds me a lot of old Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you're looking at your deck and you're just going, I have answers to problems, I just need to decide which problems it is I need to answer. And instead of just like shotgunning your effects, I think that this deck really helps learn good technical play by constantly having you ask yourself, do I need to answer that? And if not, then you just don't do that. There was a lot of times where I would just sit there with a Michaelis, or not Michaelis, a Magnifica on the field, with a Michaelis and, another Exosister under it. And I would just almost do nothing. I would just sit there because I knew that the banish and the tag out were more threatening than me using the banish. Because your opponent has to try to figure out how to bait you into doing that. And if you're patient, eventually they get to a point where they know and if you're patient and you are aware of the other decks in the format, it gets to the point where the banish becomes very obvious as to what you're supposed to hit. And then you do that, and then they're punished no matter what. So it's definitely a deck that requires a lot of patience. But one of the other cool things I like about this deck, too, before I get inside deck, is hilariously the decision fatigue that I've mentioned in the past. That decks like Snake Eye and Yubel and like those heavier combo decks have. That is not existent here. It was one of the reasons why I liked playing, I suggested playing Runic Stun if you're newer and you aren't used to big tournaments. And it's the same reason I would recommend playing a deck like Exosister. Your decision trees are much smaller, and there's much fewer of them, which means that you have less you have to do every game, which will save your mental energy for the length of the tournament. And I really like that a lot. The downside to that being that your deck is much more simplistic, and if you are playing against somebody who is aware of how your deck works, they will very quickly be able to make reads based on that. But anyway, for the side deck, there's 3 Dark Ruler No More. I side very heavily into Board Breakers. Dark Ruler No More is going to be an incredible card going into the WCQ. It's not good against some builds of Yubel because they layer their interactions so well, but it is really good into Snake Eye, and it's going to be really good into most builds of Yubel because they're gonna front load a lot of their interaction. And then 3 Cosmic Cyclone and the Harpy's Feather Duster. This is primarily going to be for stun decks, but being able to have back row removal is, of course, useful into a variety of decks. Then there's 1 Evenly Matched. This is to give you the 3rd one, so that way you can dig for it with your Prosperity. So then I figure between the 3 Evenly Matched and the 3 Dark Ruler No More, their boards are very rarely going to get to like their full setup, which is really good. 1 Goes In Match as like a kind of a win button going first, and then to protect the Goes In Match, you have 3 Solemn Judgments, and then 3 Grand Horn of Heaven. So Grand Horn of Heaven is a card that really shined in 2017. What it says is that during your opponent's main phase, when they would special summon a monster or monsters, you negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monster. And then your opponent draws a card, and then you end the main phase 1. So if you're looking at something like Yubel, you start to let them combo off, and then they go into Phantom. And then you Grand Horn of Heaven, negate the summon, destroy the Phantom, and then they go into their battle phase. That's awful. Or against Snake Eyes, you go first, and the moment they make that first Link summon into like an IP or something, you activate Grand Horn, the summon is negated, and then you go into the battle phase, and now you get an extra turn. Against Tenpai, if they would Synchro Summon, same thing. You negate the summon, boom, you go into the next phase. It is literally just there to buy you a turn. Drawing them a card is obviously not ideal, but I figure that between all of those like really important cards that you're playing, you know, like your Goes in Match, your Judgments, your Grand Horns, your Imperms, your Returnias, and everything like that, that you're going to have enough interaction that that one extra card that they just drew off of the Grand Horn won't matter, because they've also lost a minimum generally of 2 bodies. Because using the Yubel example, let's say they go into Yama and you negate the summon. Well, right there, in order to do that, they probably had to go like Dark Beckoning Beast and then Samsara D Lotus or something, and then they linked those into Yama. So it's 2 bodies right there. And then you Grand Horn, so then the Grand Horn replaces one of the bodies. So they come out with a net 0, so you're at a -1, but they're down 2 very important bodies. That card was just really good, and it was something I've been seriously considering for a little while. And I think it might be a very good call for the NA WCQ. But anyway, let me know down below what you think of this deck. If you want to see some of the basics with this deck, I would love to show you. Like I said, have been learning. I learned this deck yesterday myself. It went very well at locals. I went 4-0. Faced Fire King Snake Eye, regular Snake Eye, Kashtira, and Lightsworn. So it had a good spread of decks there. But I think that this is a deck that a lot of people can learn a lot from. I know I'm learning a lot as I'm picking it up and shuffling the cards and reading them more and more. It's a lot of fun. So let me know down below if you want to see more of this deck. Let me know if you have any suggestions if you've played Exosister, because like I said, this is a new deck for me. And if you want to pick up any of the cards, use the affiliate link in the description below. And if you like this sort of content, go ahead and subscribe. There will be more coming. Lots more right before the WCQ, trying to pump out as much as I can to help everybody else get ready, because now I'm suddenly getting ready as well. So until next time, have a great day.